The sun was barely up when I rolled my classic 1969 Mustang Fastback out of the garage, its deep, throaty growl echoing off the suburban houses like a challenge. That car wasn't just a car. It was a piece of my late father's legacy, restored bolt by bolt over years of patience and grit. The metallic midnight blue paint glistened in the early light as I eased it onto the driveway. I always drove it on weekends, mostly because the HOA in our pristine gated community had made it abundantly clear they didn't like it parked in view. And by they, I mostly meant Karen. If you've ever met an HOA Karen, you already know the type. Blonde bob haircut, sharp enough to slice bread, designer athleisure that had never seen a treadmill, and a voice that could pierce through concrete. She was the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood and the actual HOA president. An absolute nightmare with a clipboard. She had fined me for everything from leaving my trash bins out a few hours too long to planting non-uniform shrubs. I ignored her most of the time, but this morning I had a feeling I was being watched. As I polished the Mustang's hood, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. There she was, standing on her lawn across the street, hands on her hips, whispering something to her teenage son, Tyler. He was around 17, a cocky kid who thought he owned the world just because his mother convinced him he did. Tyler's smirk was practically carved into his face as his eyes locked on to my car. I didn't like that look. I threw him a curt nod. "Morning," I said, my voice neutral. He didn't nod back. Instead, he stepped closer, running his hand through his gelled hair. "Hey," he said, sizing me up. "Cool car. Want to sell it?" I shook my head, already used to people asking. "Not for sale, sorry." Tyler snorted like I'd just told him a bad joke. "Everything's for sale, man. Name your price. My mom can write a check right now." "Not this one," I said firmly, polishing the front fender. "It's sentimental." Suddenly, Karen chimed in, her voice cutting through the morning air. "Oh, come on, it's just a car. Tyler's been dreaming about a Mustang for months. We could even pay over market value. It's not like you drive it much anyway." I stood straight, staring at her. "Ma'am, I appreciate the offer, but this car is not leaving my driveway, ever." Karen's smile thinned. She tugged her sunglasses down. "You don't need to get snippy. I'm just trying to help my son. You don't want to make things difficult for yourself in this community, do you?" There it was, the thinly veiled fret. I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the car, not bothering to hide my irritation. "Karen, I've lived here long enough to know how this works. You don't get to bully me into selling something I don't want to sell. Have a nice day." Her lips pursed like she tasted something sour. She muttered something to Tyler, and they stormed off. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. That afternoon, while I was inside making lunch, I heard the distinct sound of a car alarm blaring outside. My heart dropped. I rushed to the door and froze. Tyler was in my driveway. He wasn't just near my Mustang, he was inside it, tugging at the gear shift like he owned the damned thing. "Hey!" I roared, sprinting across the lawn. "Get out of my car!" Tyler jumped, scrambling out of the driver's seat just as I reached him. "Relax, man, I was just checking it out." "You broke into it!" I shouted, shoving the door closed and checking for scratches. Karen came running out of her house like I'd just assaulted her son. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "What's going on is your kid just broke into my car."
Tyler rolled his eyes. "I didn't break into anything. The door was unlocked." "It wasn't," I growled. Karen puffed up like an angry peacock. "How dare you accuse my son? Tyler would never steal anything. He just admires your car. If you weren't being so selfish, we wouldn't even be in this situation." "Selfish?" I repeated, incredulous. "Karen, this is my property. You and your kid don't get to touch it." She jabbed a finger at me. "You know what? I'm calling the cops. You're threatening my child." I almost laughed in disbelief. "You're really going to call the police because I caught your son trespassing?" "Absolutely," she shrieked, already dialing. "This is harassment. You're dangerous." I took a deep breath and decided not to argue. She'd find out soon enough who she was calling. Within 15 minutes, 2 squad cars rolled up, sirens off but lights flashing. I watched from my porch as Karen rushed to meet them, putting on her best damsel-in-distress act. She gestured wildly at me, spinning her lies, while Tyler nodded solemnly beside her. The officers finally approached me. "Sir, we've received a complaint that you threatened a minor. Care to explain?" I opened my wallet and handed them my badge. "I'm Chief Carter," I said evenly. The officer's eyes widened. "Chief, let me stop you right there," I said, my voice dropping to a quiet authority that carried across the yard. "Karen's son broke into my car. She called you here because I caught him in the act. If you'd like, I can pull my home security footage to back that up." Karen's smug expression melted instantly. "Wait, you're the police chief?" I turned my gaze on her, and she physically stepped back. "Yes, Karen, and you just wasted police resources because your son didn't get what he wanted." Tyler's jaw went slack. The officers glanced at each other. "Sir, would you like us to take a statement?" I looked at Karen, who was now pale and shaking. "Not yet," I said slowly. "But if I so much as see your son within 10 feet of my car again, I will file charges. Do I make myself clear?" Karen swallowed hard. "Yes, Chief." "Good," I said, my voice like ice. The cops left soon after, and Karen dragged Tyler inside without another word. But I knew it wasn't over. People like Karen didn't back down quietly. And I was right. The very next week, I received a formal letter from the HOA. "Dear resident, you are in violation of community guidelines regarding vehicle storage. Please remove the unapproved classic vehicle from your property or face daily fines of $250. I crumpled the letter in my fist. This wasn't about the Mustang. This was Karen's retaliation. I could have called her out immediately. I could have flexed my authority as police chief and shut this down. But that wasn't my style. If Karen wanted a war, she was going to get one. And I was going to make sure she regretted ever laying eyes on my Mustang. The letter from the HOA burned in my hands. It was blatant retaliation. I'd lived in Brookhaven Estates for 6 years, and not once had there been a rule about unapproved classic vehicles. In fact, 2 other residents parked their vintage cars outside with 0 issue. This was Karen, pulling the HOA strings to punish me for embarrassing her in front of the cops. I set the crumpled letter down, feeling the anger simmer low and cold in my chest. She had no idea what kind of game she had started. I didn't move the Mustang. The next morning, another letter was taped to my door, this one stamped "Final Notice." Failure to comply with HOA regulations will result in daily fines of $250 and possible towing of the offending vehicle. I smirked. She really thought she could scare me.
I went to work like usual, running the department, but my mind stayed locked on Karen and her little power trip. I didn't want to simply stop her. I wanted to make sure she could never pull this stunt on anyone again. That night, I pulled my home security footage from the day Tyler broke into my car. It clearly showed him trespassing and trying to hotwire the Mustang before I caught him. The footage also captured Karen yelling threats at me about making things difficult. Perfect. But I wasn't ready to go nuclear yet. Karen would expect me to threaten legal action right away. Instead, I decided to let her dig her own grave a little deeper. The following weekend, I washed the Mustang in the driveway as usual, just to irritate her. Sure enough, the blinds on her house snapped shut, and moments later, Karen herself emerged with a clipboard, Tyler trailing behind like an obedient puppy.
"You're in violation of HOA regulations," she announced loudly, as though I hadn't already received the letters. "Good morning to you, too," I said, leaning against the hood. "You're accruing fines, Chief," she said, practically spitting my title. $2,000 so far. If you don't pay, we'll take further action." I smiled, calm as ever. "You do what you think you need to, Karen." Her brow furrowed. She'd expected me to snap or at least argue. Instead, I simply waved and went inside, leaving her seething on the sidewalk. 2 days later, I received an email from the HOA. "Due to non-compliance, we have scheduled your vehicle for removal. Towing will occur Thursday at 10 a.m. I knew exactly who had ordered it. That night, I reached out to some contacts, the city's property attorney, a friend at the local news station, and my department's fraud investigations unit. If Karen wanted to escalate this, I was going to make sure every skeleton in her HOA closet came to light. I also quietly filed a restraining order against Tyler, citing the break-in and security footage as evidence. Thursday morning came, and just as the email promised, a tow truck rolled into the neighborhood at precisely 10 a.m. Karen strutted behind it, her heels clicking against the pavement, and Tyler trailing behind like an obedient puppy. The driver hopped out, looking uncertain. "Ma'am, this car doesn't have a tow order through the city." Karen shoved a paper in his face. "This is an HOA order. That car is illegally stored. Tow it now." I stepped outside that moment, wearing my full police uniform. The effect was immediate. The tow driver froze. Karen's confident smirk faltered. "Good morning," I said, loud enough for the growing crowd of neighbors to hear. "You're about to make a very big mistake." Karen straightened her shoulders. "Chief Carter, this is an HOA matter. You're in violation of our regulations, and we are fully within our rights to remove your car." I held up my phone. "Actually, Karen, you're in violation of the law. This vehicle is fully registered and parked on my private property. You have no authority to tow it." "You're wrong," she stammered, glancing at the tow driver. "Am I?" I tapped my screen, and the large portable speaker I had set up on my porch came to life. The security footage of Tyler breaking into my car played loudly for the entire block to hear. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The video continued, showing Karen threatening me. Karen's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "Turn that off," she screeched. I ignored her. "This is the same teenager who you're protecting. The same one you claimed was admiring my car? He broke the law, and instead of addressing it, you've abused your HOA power to retaliate against me." Neighbors began murmuring among themselves. Some even took out their phones, recording everything.
Karen's composure cracked completely. "You can't prove any of this," she barked, sweat glistening on her forehead. "Oh, I can," I said, my voice dropping low, "and I will. I've already filed a restraining order against your son. I've also reported your misuse of HOA funds and power to the state's Homeowner Association Oversight Committee. Do you know what they call it when someone issues illegal fines and orders private property to be seized?" Karen blinked rapidly, shaking her head. "Fraud," I said, "and guess what? That's a felony." The tow driver took a step back. "Yeah, I'm not touching this car," he muttered, climbing back into his truck and driving off, leaving Karen standing in the street like a deer in headlights. I wasn't finished. I pulled out a stack of documents from a folder. "I took the liberty of reviewing HOA financial records," I continued. "Did you really think no one would notice the missing $25,000 from the association account? Or the invoices you approved for landscaping that never happened?" Karen's jaw dropped. I can explain." "Save it," I said coldly. "You'll have plenty of time to explain it to a judge. In the meantime, I've already called for an emergency HOA board meeting. Given that the majority of the community is here right now, we might as well vote." The crowd cheered. Karen spun around, realizing the tide had completely turned against her. Even Tyler looked pale and humiliated as whispers of embezzlement and fraud spread through the neighbors. "Effective immediately," I said. "You are removed as HOA president. You are also barred from any decision-making regarding this community until the investigation is complete." The neighbors erupted in applause. Phones recorded every second as Karen's face twisted in rage and disbelief. "You can't do this to me!" she screeched, her voice cracking. I stepped closer, my voice low so only she could hear. "You brought this on yourself. You tried to take something from me because you thought I was weak. You're about to find out exactly how strong I am." Karen backed away, shaking her head. "This isn't over," she whispered. "Oh, it is. For you, it's over." 2 days later, Karen was served with official charges for fraud and misuse of HOA funds. Tyler's restraining order was approved, which meant he couldn't even walk down my side of the street without risking arrest. The HOA board unanimously voted me in as interim president until elections could be held. My first order of business was eliminating the petty rules Karen had enforced for years. The community was finally free from her reign of terror. As for my Mustang, it sat proudly in the driveway, polished and gleaming for everyone to see. One evening, a knock sounded at my door. When I opened it, I found Tyler standing there, shoulders hunched. I came to apologize for breaking into your car and for everything." I studied him for a long moment. He looked smaller now, stripped of the arrogance his mother had instilled in him. "I appreciate that," I said finally, "but an apology doesn't erase what you did. You need to take responsibility for your actions." He nodded. I know. I'm working on it." I closed the door, unsure if he'd truly learned his lesson. But it didn't matter. Karen was gone, the neighborhood was at peace, and my father's Mustang was safe. I'd kept my cool through every insult, every lie, every attack, and in the end, I'd won, not by stooping to her level, but by letting her destroy herself with her own arrogance. People like Karen always think they're untouchable, but they forget one thing. When you come for the wrong person, you might just lose everything.